right, today on the show we got Mr. Kevin Allen. He is a championship duck caller from Gina, Louisiana. Welcome to the show, Kevin.
Taylor, how are you, buddy?
I'm doing good. So, how did you get started into duck call making?
Something I wanted to do for years, from the time I was a little kid and started watching the old Duck Commander shows and see that a country boy like Phil could, do such a thing. There was an older man that I grew up going to church with that made more ornamental calls. They weren't something that you'd hang from your lanyard, but he made a real big name for himself, Mr. Sonny Bigner, and I've seen some of his work, and that also inspired me. I didn't really want to make his style of call, and I didn't really want to make a mass-produced call like Bill, but I just wanted to try it and make myself a duck call, and I wanted to for years and years, and just never did do it. And one day I think I was online, and a wood lathe popped up. I don't know if it was an ad or what it was. I said, you know what? So I went to shopping for them and on a cheaper one. I talked to a couple of people, and I got in touch with a guy named Josh Raggio and went out to his shop, and he helped me out a little bit. And I went to Mr. Sonny Bigner's shop, and he helped me out a little bit and gave me some pointers. Just went from there.
So, how does it go from a block of wood to an efficient duck call?
In my shop, I use metal rulers. I have, a few of them, and I have my length marked on my ruler. I got it cut in with a hacksaw. I'll get a blank, say Coca-Cola wood. It's got to be at least 7.5 inches, and I cut my length for my insert off, and I'll put it on the lathe. Find my centers. I'll put it on the lathe, and I'll round it out. And then just by repetition, I figured out my calls are friction fit. I don't use O-ring or anything like that. So I just kind of figured out what distance I needed to start making my angle. And I turn it down just like that. And then I take it off and put the barrel portion of it on there, and I'll round it out and then go ahead and cut it down for the band, glue the band on, drill it out, and just, after the epoxy has cured, usually the next day, then I'll just start shaping it, and I'll drill out my insert and put it in my jig. I had a custom jig made from an insert that I'd made off a flat jig, shaped it myself, and then once I finally figured out that I had one that sounded like a duck, I sent it off and had a custom jig made. So anyway, I'll put it in the custom jig and cut it out with a bandsaw and then file it down where it doesn't pull any more wood off. Cut my reeds out of a sheet of mylar and cut my cork out of strips of cork and make it all fit together and start trimming on the reed until it sounds right. Sometimes it takes a little more sanding on the tone board in certain spots.
It's pretty impressive. You showed me that one that you have in your lanyard, and it really does sound good. What's your company called?
KA Calls. I went all out with it. Very creative.
Very original.
Yeah.
So let's get into your competition. When did you start competition calling?
Well, it was just the calls themselves. Right after I had my custom jig made, I think I had actually entered some calls the prior year. I think it was 2017, and then it was something that I'd made off a custom jig, and man, they didn't sound real good at all. They just wasn't it, And sometime after that, in the year 2017, I happened to mess up and make one that sounded real good, and so in 2018, I entered the Louisiana Call Makers contest, and I think I entered 5 calls. I believe I ended up third place in the open division, and that was pretty much that didn't have anything to do with sound. That was just on, build quality and appearance. And I was competing against people like Mr. Sonny Bigner, the people doing all the checkering and the carving of the calls and stuff. So for me to have just basically entry based just on the finish pretty much, on my attention to detail in the finish work, getting third place against a lot of those guys was very impressive to me.
Especially just now making your name and going against people that have a lot of reputation around the state of Louisiana.
Right. Not just in the state of Louisiana, man. Some of them guys are world renowned. I know Mr. Sonny and Mr. Yule from right around here. People all over the world collect his calls, and it was he's been gone for a long time, several years, but his wife still does it. And yeah, it was it was an honor to beat some of their entries. But in the open, in the working division, where your score's calculated by finish and sound and ease of use and, all these different factors. But there's one man blows the call. He blows every call in every entry. And I actually had the highest scoring call, and me and another guy tied with 1 point less than my other call made. So pretty much finished first and tied for second with my entries. And, it pretty much just came out of nowhere with it. And, I was proud of myself. And I posted a picture on one of the groups in Facebook with my trophy and my call, and I had probably 6 months worth of orders by the time I went to bed that night.
It's definitely a big accomplishment, especially like I said, going against those people to even get anything is a big
Right.
accomplishment. But to go in and take the trophy, that says a lot about your calls.
Exactly. And the guy that actually blew the call after the competition was over with that day, he offered me $500 for the call that won the competition, but it was actually made for a very good friend of mine that was a major supporter and cheerleader. He would call me. He knew that I was going to be in my shop every day after work. He would call me on FaceTime, just sit there and watch me. And whenever I was tuning a call, he would sit back and listen and give, pointers. Well, I think it's got too much hold, or I think it's got a little too much rattle, or, this or that. So I had made the call for him. And it was actually number one off my custom jig that I had made. And, honestly, I think it sounds better than the one that I have on my lanyard now.
It's definitely a good thing whenever outdoorsmen can come together and bring each other up instead of tearing each other down. A lot of times you see on Facebook just people bashing for doing this or doing that. Everybody's got their own way of doing it, but to have guys and friends that can actually help you out and give critiques in a positive way, that says a lot about certain people. I just wish that it was more like that these days.
Right, exactly. And, like you saying that, Josh Raggio, and I had no idea who he was at the time that I went to his shop and visited him, and him taking the time to visit with me for, oh man, it was 3 or 4 hours that day, and blow every every call that I had already made. And Josh actually gave me a flat jig that he had extra. He gave it to me to help me get started. I quickly learned exactly who it was. He's probably the biggest name in custom call making in the whole world. His just a basic Coca-Cola or African Blackwood call. I think his lowest price is $400 to start out. That's just because he made. Had no idea the greatness I was in the presence of at the moment, but I learned real quick.
Yeah, you just thought you was hanging out with a hunting buddy. Turned to find
Yeah,
out that
yeah,
he has his own thing going.
yeah. So I thought I was going to meet a guy who knew how to make duck calls and was a duck hunter like myself. But come to find out, he quit a big time job with one of the big heavy equipment companies and started making calls full time, and it's done very, very well with it.
Always good to see everybody win as far as that goes. For
Right,
him to be able to, he's got his own thing going, but to still help you out or says a lot about that person for sure.
right, and it was as I learned it become a great honor. It may help my name. People ask, how did you get started? Have any help? Brand, I mentioned his name.
Yeah, absolutely. What is your most favorite call that you've created? If you had to pick one call to either get back and keep or recreate, which would it be?
Well, if I had to choose one, just one, I would say that it'd probably be that one that I won that first competition with. It's probably the best overall sound producing call that I've ever put out. And, each call I make does sound different. Like, they all have the same basic sound, but, it's just when you're making things by hand, they're not going to be exact. In duck call making, just a 1/100th an inch. I mean, just or a 1,000th of an inch, whether it be a reed or just sanding one extra swipe on a tone board might make a world of difference. But not only that, but that call, that call is a special call. Just for the fact that it put me on the map in the duck call making world.
Absolutely. I mean, to win something against, like I said, those people that you had to go against, I know that one definitely holds dear into your heart.
Right. But the guy that owns it also is a very dear friend of mine, so I'm very honored for him to have it too.
If anybody was going to have it, that'd be the only one. Is that right?
Absolutely.
So tell me about how you made this duck call out of a elk shed.
Okay. The wood guy that I used to use up in New York, he had found some people in, I think it's North Dakota, South Dakota, something like that, that raised elk. They farmed elk just like people, have cattle or sheep, whatever. This guy raises elk, and he takes the sheds every year and he cuts them up and sells them for dog. And my wood supplier got no idea how he found out, got in touch or whatever, but he would buy these elk antler pieces and stabilize them, and then they do that to some softer woods and like burl woods and things like that. And what stabilizing is, I'm not exactly sure. It's some type of epoxy type stuff, and they put it into a pressure pot or a vacuum chamber and basically impregnate the wood, or in this case, the elk antler, in any porous cavity, anything like that. It fills it all in and makes it as hard as, very dense wood. And he used to call me all the time on FaceTime and walk around the shop and show me, some new stuff that he'd gotten in and whatnot. And he called me and said, "Hey, I got something here you might want to check out." And I did. I was all on it. I was like, "Oh yeah." Well, in my mind, I didn't realize they were going to be quite as big as they are. I ain't never messed with elk, So I had in my mind that I was going to use them for bands. Just cut little pieces off to use as bands. And I said, "Shoot, I'm gonna try to make a duck call out of it," because it was big enough. And of course, with something like that, on your insert, you have to sleeve in different material to use for the tone board itself, because that you can't have the whole insert made out of that. So I sleeved in some micarta to cut the tone board out of. And but man, it was a booger to put a finish on. I want to say it took me about probably 6 or 8 hours of work just on the finish on that call, because you know even though it'd been stabilized, it still had some porous. Uh, and when you put the finish on it that I put on it, which was a CA finish, it just doesn't show well on the shelf or whatever. But it was a really good call as well. It sounded really, really well.
I bet that was a slick looking call for sure.
Oh yeah, definitely. Yeah, it was one of the prettier calls I've made for sure. Uh,
Kevin, how did you get started into hunting?
Well, it was my grandpa, my mom's side, my mom's dad, and her brother. My dad, but I guess like it was in my blood at birth. That's all I wanted to do was go duck hunting with them, and they coon hunted at night, and I got into that as well. But I think I don't know, 2 or 3 years old the first time I conned my grandpa into bringing me one day when it was kind of warm, and I just fell in love. And it's being out on the lake in a duck blind has always been home to me more than any other place or anywhere else. It's not something I do. It's just who I am. You could take the rest of the world away and leave duck hunting, and I'll be just perfectly fine.
So you would say that your grandpa was your biggest impact on hunting.
Absolutely, without a doubt. Um, he was my hero. He was the man that I thought walked on water, and if if he did it, I wanted to do it. But like I said, my dad wasn't. He was a great dad, but he wasn't into that kind of stuff. Everything that I know now about hunting in general, or anything outdoors. The foundation was laid by my grandpa, and it was a very solid foundation coming from him.
I said in an earlier podcast that us as hunters have to get these other younger generations in the woods. We have to leave a legacy behind, and to get them started in the woods like you have your daughter, it really means a lot to conservation as well as hunting to keep that tradition alive.
Right, man. I've actually got 5 kids, and the oldest one doesn't hunt. She tried it a couple of times when she was, a kid, and it just wasn't for her. I've got 2 boys that are both turned out to be really good duck hunters. I got my middle girl that was always kind of scared to go out. She started going with me religiously in the last couple of years, and she just turned 16 this past New Year's Eve. Got her first gun. She hadn't been able to shoot her first duck yet, but she's going every chance she gets. She's not in school, or she's in the different types of sports, and anytime she's not busy, she wants to be in the duck blind. And then I got my baby girl that she hunts with her mom and stepdad, and when she's not with them, she's hunting with me, and she's pretty eat up with it too. She's right at home in a duck blind, or when her mom in a deer stand. And it's absolutely vital to the progression and, I guess, the longevity of the thing that we love, that we raise our kids to love it and to respect it the way that we do. And, even before my kids were old enough to hunt, I've always taken kids, from church, or, coworkers' kids or something like that showed interest in it. I would take them, and it's been real rewarding over the years. Matter of fact, today I was in the blind with a kid that he's a pretty good little duck hunter. He said, "Man, can you imagine?" He said, "I wish I'd have grew up with you as my dad."
That's definitely a good feeling to have that impact on our youth, and to continue the success of duck hunters. And because when we're gone, they have to pick up the slack as far as
Right.
preserving our hunting rights and stuff like that. So to get everybody out in the woods and to show God's creation in its full form, I mean, that's very important.
Absolutely, it's absolutely vital. Like I said, and there's so many kids these days that do it just because it's cool, or because their buddies are doing it, and they do have the younger generation has a bad name in the industry right now. Any chance I get to, I guess, kind of mentor somebody from the younger generation, I do, and it's some bad things goes on. I'm by no means perfect, but when it comes to that kind of stuff, I try to always do the right thing.
And it's only a few of them that's given the bad rap. I mean, for most part, most of them aren't bad kids. Like anything else, it takes a handful of people to run it for the rest of them. I heard a story where they're only letting one boat in every time on a time limit. Somebody standing out there letting them through the gate. It's stuff like that's paid in blood, really. I mean, it takes a few individuals to run it for everybody. Most of the thrill of the duck hunts in Arkansas are the whole running, but it seems like that's going away as well.
Right, and that is 100% no doubt that comes from somebody that wasn't, or a group of somebodies who weren't mentored in the right ways of doing things. I know older men that have quit hunting because of things like that. It's just not a good thing to see.
No, it's definitely a shame. To turn on that, talk about how hard it can be hunting in Louisiana.
Man, it's the worst. It's the worst. And the funny thing about it is there was a biologist, I guess, with the Federal Wildlife Fisheries, or something like that. A few years ago, said, I was talking to him. He said, "Man," he said, "if you can kill ducks in Louisiana, he said, you can kill ducks anywhere." He said, "By the time they get to us, they've seen everything, they've heard everything. I mean, we down here, we got to be on our A game more times than not. Like, you got to have everything just right." I had a guy from up in Kansas come down and hunt with me a few years ago, and first couple of groups of ducks, and I mean, this guy's a duck call blowing dude. he can do things, and them guys do on them stages, and I mean, he make it. This joker's out there talking about, "What, I think we need to move decoys, or this or that. What's going on? These ducks aren't responding. Welcome to Louisiana, buddy." And I finally calmed him down and told him, I said, just relax a little bit and let me let me see if we can't get some ducks, and I pulled a little rabbit or two out of my hat, and finally we started killing some ducks that day. But he was just in shock that that's how we have to hunt day in and day out.
Absolutely. The pressure by the time they get to Louisiana is so bad. Used to everybody came to Louisiana, Arkansas, and I guess everybody kind of got smart and said, "Hey, instead of us spending all this money going there, let's just put the money into our own places." And
That's it.
our agriculture has a lot to do with it. Louisiana's became big into sugarcane, and we don't have the soybean fields and the rice fields like we used to. And it just we're not seeing the volume of birds. Yeah, you can go in and kill them in one hole one day, but you go in the next day, you're gonna have to find a different hole.
That's it. Drainage and irrigation too, man. Places that we hunt is when I was a kid. These little breaks out in the middle of a bean field or something that used to, after a few rains, they'd back up out into the field a little bit, and we used to go out there and just kill a fire out of the ducks. Now they got them to where they drain, and the fields don't hold water anymore like they used to. It's just they're what ducks we get are pretty much confined to certain places that historically they weren't confined to. With the loss of the rice and bean fields down south that turn into sugar cane. I guess it's, what's the word they use? Improvements in farming practices, or something along them lines. It is more efficient for the farmers and it's better for them, but it's not good for ducks.
That's right. That machine's picking a lot more grain up than it used to, for sure.
Exactly.
So what do you think sets you apart from other hunters? Which I think I know the answer, because looking at your Snapchat, any chance you get, you're out there in the duck blind on the water. You might have good days, you might have bad days.
Yeah and no. My thing is, you can't kill them on the couch. And I've gone and set the blind, and I mean, go to this blind or that blind in different areas of the lake, and trying them, in all these different areas with different winds and different days, with the weather, sun, and all these different variables, trying to outthink the duck. And if they don't want to be there, they're not going to be there. So the best thing is to be there when they want to be there.
I'll definitely say one thing is we got to hunt together at Catahoula Lake. We saw some ducks. Me and you went out there and we switched it up, and all of a sudden we started seeing a lot more ducks. And
Right.
I think it's your vision of how the decoy should look. I mean, we saw a lot more ducks once you found out, hey, we need to switch these decoys up.
Right, right, yeah, and that was the other thing I think that if there is something that sets me apart, is first of all, I'm there, and then second of all is I'm willing to put in the work for it. If I've got to go out there and move 300 decoys around, and it may be just because of shift in the wind and how they look from the direction duck may be approaching. I'll do it. If I've got to pick up a dozen decoys and go stand beside a bush out in the middle of no man's land because that's where the duck want to be, I'll do it.
Whatever it takes.
Yeah, I mean, I've gone, chasing water back and forth, rising and falling. I've gone hunted one day a few years ago. I had gone one day and put decoys out on a blind and was going back the next day to brush it, and the water fell out. Couldn't get back to get my decoys picked up, and I couldn't get back to brush the blind. So I was left to hunt another blind, and I hunted it for like 3 days. The water came back up to where I could get to the other one, through the day. So once that hunt was over that afternoon, we had to go and load up 2 boats to brush, and we were out there until like 1:30, 2 o'clock in the morning, brushing this blind and getting it ready to be able to hunt it the next day. And of course, we had a very successful day, but we put the work in to have that successful day. Stuff like that. I'll go days and days without more than a couple hours of sleep at night sometimes because I may be out there moving decoys in the middle of the night. Because one thing, I want to be courteous and not do things like that while people are trying to hunt. And the other thing is that I don't want to take away from my own hunt, do things like that when I can just do them, at night. And there aren't many people willing to put in that much effort in it, really.
No, I mean, I see a lot of people. The ducks are here. You just have to chase them a lot more than you used to. Now, I will say that you can't go to the same exact spot every single time and expect the same result. Not in today's world. They've heard the same call, like you said, from here to Canada. They've heard the same thing. There's too many people, so much pressure that you actually have to go work and find these ducks.
That's right. And sometimes we'll be sitting in a blind that we've been killing out of for a couple of days, and we'll start noticing that the ducks are, we're still killing a few, but there's more ducks over in a different area, and they're not getting shot over there. There just hadn't been any ducks in that area, and there's nobody really over there hunting. And when we get done with the hunt that day, we'll pick up some things or everything or whatever and move over to the other area. And it's sometimes it pays off big, sometimes it's a complete failure, but I'm going to put the same effort into it every time.
Can't say you didn't try, that's for sure.
That's right. That's right.
So do you have any future hunts planned for next year?
Yeah, I kind of do. I've made one duck hunt outside the state of Louisiana. I've very rarely ventured outside of LaSalle Parish or Catahoula Parish, right here around home. But I would like to get up. I've had multiple invites to go hunt Arkansas this year, and the last couple of years. I've got some leads on some stuff up in Oklahoma that I'm probably going to go try. And I actually got a thing the other day, a text from a friend of mine about a duck lease up in Arkansas that I'm really considering. It's a big time deal. So I'm going to venture out a little more, try to get away from home, see some different stuff.
Yeah, I'm gonna try to get you down here to South Texas in the marsh and have a couple of duck hunts down here for sure.
Definitely, man, definitely.
We ain't gonna see no mallards, but we'll see a lot more things. And that's about the same volume of birds. It's just a lot of divers,
Right. Yeah, I think y'all get a few redheads down there, don't you?
thousands.
Yeah.
My buddy sent me a video from yesterday. It was thousands on the water.
That's one I haven't killed. We killed I've killed a few in my life, but that's just something we don't see a whole lot of. I saw one redhead duck this year, and I think the last one I saw before it was probably about, I don't know, about 4 or 5 years ago, and it was just one. It was a pair of Drake and the hen, but I'd love to go in there and shoot some redheads and
Well, absolutely. Like you said, before coming down here, I probably saw one, maybe two my whole life in the last 2 seasons. That's been the majority of what we shot. Definitely have, it's a good thing to see variety. I still miss my mallards. I miss my wood ducks, but to get out and widgeon and pintail and a bunch of teal, which I know Catahoula has a bunch of teal. It's just good to almost like you got 2 different spots. You know what I mean?
Right. Yeah. Yeah. That we'll definitely have to make that happen.
So for future hunters and younger hunters, what would be the biggest tip getting a young hunter started in Louisiana?
Get your mind right, man. Be respectful of everybody else around you. You're not the only person out there with the passion for it that you have. Of the people over there next to you are just as passionate about it as you are. And you never know who you may run into. So just be respectful and be mindful. Approach it as you would anything else in life with your mama watching. Don't do anything you wouldn't do in front of your mama, and just respect the life itself. Just because he may not have the real nice equipment that you have or whatever, shouldn't take anything away from him as a hunter. It's the biggest piece of advice that I would give any young hunter.
Well, just like that, what you said, I mean, you look and you see Phil Robertson still motoring around in a flat bottom John boat.
Exactly.
He don't need all that. He's one of especially in Louisiana. He's an icon. And I know around the country he is, but it's just something about him in Louisiana that really holds a special place in a lot of duck hunters' hearts.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, for sure, man. I don't have all this big high dollar equipment myself, and I mean, I've got stuff that's effective, and I have, you know, a lot of these younger guys that hunt with me. They got nicer stuff than I have, and they're 17, 18 years old, and you know sometimes they leave their high dollar equipment at home and ride with me, and they're fine with that. They get it. You know what I mean? It's not about that kind of stuff to them. They do it because it's what they love to do. They have the same drive, passion for it that I have, and their mind is right about things, and they realize that the man paddling the P row is no less than they are, that he's there to do the same thing they're there to do. They're going to be respectful of him and may even, help him out if they see the opportunity to do so. That's the kind of people I try to surround myself with. That's the kind of people that I hope my kids will be. Anytime I get the chance to mentor a kid, that's probably the biggest thing that I try to teach them in the beginning is just be respectful of everybody. And that's kind of what I was saying earlier about doing things the right way, and that doesn't necessarily mean learning how to put out a decoy spread or learning how to blow a call right or being the best shot. It's everything else. Let the ducks rest when it's time for them to rest. Don't take more than you need. But the most important thing is to be respectful of the sport itself and the other people in it.
Absolutely. I mean, all that gear is it's good, right? It's fun. It makes it a lot easier to go places. If I had to give another tip, would be just pattern your gun. Shoot outside of season. You owe it to the ducks as well to know what your gun's going to do. To wound all these ducks and all that. Yeah,
Yeah,
you come back to the boat land and said, yeah, we wounded 8 of them. Well, that's 8 ducks that if you didn't probably shoot, they could still be flying. Or if you made a better shot, that's 8 more in your pocket.
that's it.
Uh, we went down my first hunt actually in South Texas. I brought my 870 because I didn't want my semi-automatic to experience that saltwater too soon. And they looked at me crazy. Why you got a pump? I said, well, if that boat breaks down, you could also use it as a paddle.
That's right.
In my opinion, there's not been a more reliable gun than the 870 Express. Now everybody's got their own flavor. I'll stand behind that one any day of the week. Even though I love my semi-automatic, I'll stand behind my 870 all day.
That's it. I always carry 2 guns with me. I guess that's other than getting wet and cold, that's the thing that'll ruin your hunt quicker than anything is a gun breaking or whatever. So I always carry 2 guns, and my secondary gun is my old 1970 something model Remington 870 Wingmaster pump. And today in the blind, I was sitting there and I had it just kind of propped up over there, and I have a semi-automatic that I shoot now, and my old pump was just sitting there, and them two young guys that were with me. So I may have been on the phone at the moment or something, but I heard them talking, and one of them said something about the gun, and the other one said, "Man, can you imagine the stories that gun would have if it could talk?" And I wouldn't even face them. I had my back to them. I just kind of grinned. Thinking to myself, man, you wouldn't believe some of the stories that gun could tell.
It's truly amazing what them older guns can still do as long as you keep up with them and keep them clean.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, I shot the gun for 20 years, and there's no telling what that thing had gone through before I got it. It was made before I was ever born, and it give me 20 good years of reliability above all else, and it's still just as reliable as it was in 1970, whatever it was made.
I think between those old Winchester pumps and that 870, I don't think there'll ever be more ducks killed than those guns right there.
Oh, not a chance. No.
So Kevin, what calls are on your lanyard?
Well, I always have a spec call because hunting out in Catahoula Lake, sometimes we get the opportunity to work some geese here and there. But I've got a Coon Creek whistle. I've got a Rich Tone Mondo S. I've got a JJ Lairs hybrid, and then I've got a call that I made It was the one that I made is the one I touch the most. It's not a real loud call, but it's the duckiest call by far. I get complimented anytime somebody new hunts with me. I get complimented on it about how much it literally just sounds like a real duck.
Surprised me, especially when the mallards came and you talked sweet to them, and they kept banking back and banking back, and finally I think somebody else shot and
Yeah,
and kind of blew them out of there. But that's
yeah,
just a part of it.
yeah. That is, and that's the most unfortunate part. But seeing them ducks work on again on a call that I made, something I created, and man, it almost gives me chills every time.
So, Kevin, in conclusion, what do you think Louisiana could do to help duck conservation?
Ooh, man.
That's a loaded
Oh,
question right there.
what could Louisiana do to help duck conservation?
I would say that I would go back to leasing some of these farms and some of this land back out to the farmers and let them farm the land. They do it up in Kentucky. They do it in other places where they'll let the farmer come in and work. They'll pay him for it, and he can
Yeah,
either get the grain or he can't. He can leave it. It's more just a food. I think North Louisiana needs food for duck
yeah,
conservation than
100%.
anything. I know we still have the marshland, and I know the ducks still go there, but for North Louisiana to have the duck numbers total that they do is it's not right. Like we talked about, Louisiana used to be the spot that between Catahoula and Stuttgart, you could go hunting anywhere and see ducks just flying in a V, and you just don't see that anymore.
Right. Um, anytime the government buys property and makes it a WMA or a National Wildlife Refuge, first thing they do is put trees back in it. If it was, for instance, Catahoula National Wildlife Refuge right here, the place that I grew up hunting, from the time I was a kid, the property used to belong to Tensas Delta, and I don't remember it being farmed, but it was still open fields that had all of the stuff that grew in it, cinny weeds and all these different things like that, the wild rice and the millets and all this different stuff grows out there, even though it's not grains that are planted that the ducks, like milo or soybeans or rice. It's still stuff that ducks love. And when the backwater would come into those fields, it'd be just thousands upon thousands of ducks out there night and day. And once the National Wildlife Refuge purchased all this property, they uh, put in a CRP and replanted every bit of it back in hardwoods. And now, even with the backwater comes up, there's just no ducks in there. I mean, not like it used to be. Man, when I was a kid, we coon hunted on. We'd go by boat and cut the hounds loose on the little islands out there. If the dogs would get over a couple hundred yards away, you couldn't hear the dogs tree for the sound of pintails and mallards and widgeon all around you in every direction. Any hour of night, and it's gone. It's just not there anymore. And it happened here. I know it's happening in every other part of the state the government gets. I feel like they should be working toward conservation of, the wildlife. And I don't think that's what they have in mind when they do that stuff.
I know down here in South Texas, DU to name drop, they're huge, but I can see why. I mean, there's ducks everywhere, and they do a lot of conservation stuff up here that promotes duck habitat. So down here, for sure, I agree with it. For up in Louisiana, I just being hometown it's kind of saddening to go from you hear all the stories to now there's nothing. I hate it for our kids, really.
Oh yeah, for sure. The rate we're going, I mean, it's downgraded a lot since I was a kid. At the rate we're going, there's going to be nothing left when my kids are my age.
Absolutely. Well, Kevin, I appreciate you coming on today. Where can people find you? I know you're kind of backed up on duck call making, but if anybody wants to talk about placing an order in the future and stuff like that, where can they find you?
Just Kevin Allen on Facebook or same name on Instagram.
I sure do appreciate it, and stay rugged.
You too, buddy. Thank you.